This is DaviD TaL. This is the Balagan Connection. I'm back in Israel, as you can see behind me, and one of the most beautiful views in the country. We'll connect a little bit to the view, but we've got a lot of things that we need to talk about what's going on in Israel and how all of this connects, including some of the amazing events that happened on my last tour here in Israel. We finished a tour about a week ago, and how God is working in all kinds of mysterious and some not so mysterious ways here in the land of Israel. We're going to be talking about the situation in Gaza. We're going to be talking about the situation in the north. We'll be talking about Iran and how that connects, and going into a little bit more details about what is actually happening on the ground. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll get a feeling for what's going on here and why me and Christy are here now, together with GIHON Springs, as part of GIHON Springs, in order to extend our work here in the Holy Land. Let's start off with the beginning, Gaza. The situation in Gaza has not been completely resolved. As of now, there's still 59 hostages in Gaza, and the stories that we're hearing from what's been going on in Gaza are horrific. The survivors, the hostages that have been released, tell us stories of abuse, of rape, of starvation, terrible, terrible stories. The ceremonies of releasing the hostages are something like out of a medieval horror film, and the situation in Gaza hasn't really changed. Israel is negotiating with Hamas in order to release more of the hostages. And the basic idea is that while we're in negotiation, the hostages will be saved, and maybe we'll get some of the hostages out. But I think most Israelis and most of Israel realize that we're never going to get all of the hostages out, and that's part of the situation that we're talking about. Israel is in the middle of a very deep, very polarizing, very heart-wrenching debate about negotiation or fighting. And the idea is that we can't really do both at the same time, or that one has to come with the other. Meaning we're going to have to decide or agree or kind of reach some kind of agreement that if we want to get some of the hostages out, we're going to have to leave some of the hostages in Gaza. And that is heart-wrenching. One of the things that me and Christy have been noticing the minute we came back is the hostages are all over the Israeli society. You walk down through the airport, you get pictures of the hostages. You drive from the airport home, you see yellow flags on the overpasses, and you see the pictures of the hostages. You see huge banners of "Bring them home now." Demonstrations almost every day in the center of the cities, "Bring them home now, bring them home now." And the sentiment, the emotion, the ideal behind this is a lot of people here are saying, reach a hostage agreement, release the hostages that Hamas is willing to release. Doesn't matter what you have to pay, doesn't matter what you have to agree to, we want them home now. And like everything in this country, it's now turned into a political issue. Because Benjamin Netanyahu is not doing what these people think he should do, then he has a political agenda, he's doing something else, he's going into something different, he's doing it to keep his seat, he's doing it to stay in power. And again, like other things in this country, the politics mix in. We are a parliamentary system, which means Benjamin Netanyahu stays in power, or the government stays in power, based on a coalition with smaller parties. Some of the smaller parties are demanding all kinds of things in return for agreeing to what the government needs to do. And so the politics are here. We have the "bring them home now, no matter what, no matter how" camp on one side, which I have to say I can also understand. I mean, if it was your daughter, your son, your father in a dungeon in Gaza, what would you say? On the other hand, we're having the government saying, wait a minute, we can't do everything and anything and everything in order to bring them home and allow Gaza to be another threat in a year, 2 years, or 3 years. So this tension is going on, and what Israel has been trying to do is negotiating through the Americans in order to try to find some kind of an arrangement that the Hamas would agree to, that Israel could live with. But it's been going on for something like 3 months now, and no arrangement has been made. So Israel is saying, we realize that it's not going to be negotiated. Hamas is not going to accept anything but total capitulation of Israel, and we've turned on the pressure. So Israel's gone back in. Right now, a little bit slowly on the ground, and has been using air assets to take out specific targets. But as of the day before yesterday, Israel has asked the million people in the northern part of Gaza to move to the south, which usually is indicative of the fact that Israel is on its way in to do groundwork in the northern part of Gaza. And when I say groundwork, it turns out that we have 5 divisions lined up, ready to go into Gaza. And when I mean divisions, I mean each one is like, in biblical terms, a legion. I mean, this is a massive amount of Israel's military power arrayed around Gaza. I've seen the lines of tanks in holding areas and staging areas arranged around Gaza. And what I'm trying to say is this is us getting ready to go back in. In the meantime, we have cut Gaza into, I'm going to say, 3 pieces. So we have the Philadelphia corridor along the border with, on this side, and let's put it up on this side, along the border with Egypt. Okay, that actually is on the border with Egypt. We have the Morag route, which runs through the middle of the Gaza Strip, that actually cuts the Gaza Strip also into another piece. We have the Netzarim route. And what Israel is doing right now is actually moving in, saying we don't want to control all of Gaza, but we will be in these strategic areas. So people cannot cross back and forth without us vetting them and making sure that we know who is there. That's the situation right now. There still is a negotiation going on, but everybody hopes that the negotiation is going to release some of the hostages, including, by the way, the American hostage, an Israeli soldier that is also an American citizen that is in the Gaza dungeons, which has President Trump going crazy on this. And in the meantime, there's still negotiation to go on, but Israel is getting ready for an all-out assault on Gaza. And the idea is that if we don't have somebody to put in place afterward, Israel is going to stay in place in Gaza in the foreseeable future. That's the underlying feeling right now. And another thing is actually kind of coming together. The military establishment, the political establishment is starting to realize that the Hamas is not afraid of dying. They're a death cult. They actually say it. They're not afraid. They don't have a problem with their people dying. And they even don't have a problem with their people suffering. There were demonstrations in Gaza where some of the Gazans were standing up and saying, Hamas, you've ruined our lives. By the way, only now, after a year and a half, after Israel has turned off food and water and electricity going into the Gaza Strip, they're standing up and saying, Hamas, you've ruined our life. We want you out of power. Now, not enough people have been doing it. And some of those who were in the demonstration, some of the ringleaders in the demonstrations have been brutally mutilated and hung from public areas. Okay, but what I'm trying to say is that the Gazans haven't reached a conclusion that they want to finish this. And the only thing, and Israel's starting to understand, the only thing that will make an impact is if we take away the land. Not take away because we want it, but take away because that's the only thing that they would find or take into consideration. And just like the whole Gaza, the whole Arab world went all berserk, when President Trump basically said, move them out of Gaza and turn Gaza into something else, take away the land in Gaza and turn it into something else, that freaked everybody out more than anything else. So Israel is saying maybe what we need to do is take the northern part of Gaza. We hold it until they agree to what we need them to agree. And there's a growing momentum into that. In the meantime, those 5 divisions, 5 or 6 divisions, according to some, are standing ready and poised to go in and completely retake Gaza. And when we do that, all of the population will go through a strainer. We'll figure out who the Hamas terrorists are. Those will be taken into custody, and the whole situation will change. But that hasn't happened yet, and we're waiting to see what will happen. Israel believes that the American administration has given us the okay for that if we need to do that. That's the situation in Gaza. But while that is still up in the air, the other issues that President Trump and Israel is trying to reach cannot be, how do you say, taken off the table. And there's a feeling that President Trump is putting a lot of pressure on resolving the Gaza issue because he wants to deal with other issues. So the issue with Saudi Arabia cannot be resolved, and other issues cannot be resolved as long as Hamas is still in power. And it looks like there's not going to be any choice for us to go back into Gaza. And believe me, I know what it's like. I actually spent major amounts of time in Gaza in the military. Israel didn't want Gaza. We actually moved out of Gaza in 2005, and it looks like our enemy has left us no choice but to go back in. So that's the situation in Gaza, and what I need you to do is pray for the families who every time they hear that Israel is going to go back in Gaza freak out because it puts their loved ones who are still hostages in jeopardy. And it puts pressure on the people, the hostages in Gaza. And again, we're starting to take this into consideration, but you're starting to understand the complexities of what's going on. In the meantime, the Israeli government is kind of, in a big balagan. They're, again, as part of this lawfare, political fair, there's attempts to shake up the coalition. There's attempts to go forward with the corruption charges on Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu has fired everybody in the government that isn't aligned to his line of thought. He's acting very, very harsh. And the people who are on the other side of the political divide, a lot of the families of the hostages are totally against what he is doing. And we're seeing a growing pressure inside and a growing rift inside the government. Pray that this government will stay together until all of this is decided. Let's go north. In Syria, the free-for-all has settled down, but Turkey has been showing signs of moving into Syria, mainly into air bases in the center and the northern part of Syria. Specifically the T4 base that was used by the Iranians as a base, and Israel has bombed the T4 base in Syria a couple of times. Turkey started moving assets into there. There was talk about them turning it into a drone base. Israel bombed the T4 completely into obliteration, and there was a tension that Israel and Turkey might find themselves clashing inside Syria. As of now, that's not happened. And you understand the complexities because Turkey is a NATO nation, the second strongest NATO nation, in Europe after the United States. But the situation in Lebanon has not been resolved either. So the Hezbollah, the Iranian proxy that was in Lebanon, has been kicked out. We're trying to reach a ceasefire, a peace, whatever you want to call it, in Lebanon. The Americans and the Saudis are mixed in, but the Hezbollah is not giving up. And the Lebanese government is still totally under influence of the Hezbollah. So they fired a couple rockets the other day. Israel retaliated with bringing down the multi-storied building inside Beirut. We've told the Lebanese, we're taking the gloves and you are going to be held responsible for whatever the Hezbollah does. And here's the main key, and we're going to see this in a minute. The reassociation between the instigator, Hezbollah, and the country from where they instigate this. And what the Iranians have been doing and the Arabs have been doing is creating this separation, We're the Hamas, we're not all of the Palestinians. Don't hit the Palestinians because of what Hamas does. We're Hezbollah, we're not all of Lebanon. Don't take out on Lebanon what the Hezbollah does. Or we're the Houthim in Iran and Yemen, and don't take everything that the Houthim does out on Iran. And that brings us to the last. So in Lebanon, huge amounts of pressure for the Lebanese army and the Lebanese government to disarm the Hezbollah and take over control. President Trump has taken the gloves off in Yemen. He's moved B-2 bombers to Diego Garcia, which is in the Indian Ocean, within striking distance of Yemen. He's actually used them in Yemen a couple of times. In the meantime, he's been doing joint maneuvers between B-52 and Israeli F-35s. And what he is saying is to Iran, if this is not over by the beginning of May, we are going to connect everything that Yemen does to Iran. We will make Iran pay for what their Yemenite proxy does in the Red Sea. And that might be the excuse, because he's got all the assets there and he's got all the capabilities there to actually take the Iranian nuclear option, if not off the table, then push it back a major amount of time. And it looks like what he is doing is bringing the biggest stick that he can into the Middle East. He's saying to Iran, back down from the nuclear option, back down from making a balagan in the whole Middle East. If you do not, then we will use the stick. But sit down and talk to us. And he's trying to negotiate with Iran in order to achieve what he thinks is important. Now, we in Israel have a problem with that. We're kind of worried. But again, this is the way President Trump does things: negotiate, put it together, and if not, we're going to use the stick. We're going to use the economic stick, we're going to use the political stick, and we're going to use the military stick. And that is the situation now with the proxies and with Iran. Which brings me to something really I think really important. I finished a tour that did come in last week. And while I'm talking about this, we're thinking about putting together a GIHON tour, a GIHON Springs tour somewhere towards the end of the year. If you're interested in being a part of that, please leave a comment below. Give us a way to contact you. Let's start getting, because if you are interested in a tour like that, we need to know if there is a need. It's going to be more of a support Israel, pray for Israel. We're going to go over there to Tel Aviv. We're going to pray over Tel Aviv. We're going to go over there to Gaza and pray next to Gaza for peace in Gaza. We'll go up to the north, pray in the north, and support and do all the things that are connected to GIHON Springs. But I was on a regular tour. A church came in from Hawaii. Beautiful, amazing. I mean, the tour sites are empty. But I want to share something with you that happened on the hill overlooking the valley of Elah on the last day of the tour. Last year, in the same place, we met a group of Israelis who were on a bar mitzvah tour, just, touring the land. And we got to share the gospel with 40 Israelis who asked, why are Christians on a hill in Israel overlooking the valley of Elah on one side in Gaza and the Gaza Strip on the other side? And we got to explain to them. And the question was, wait a minute, but you're Christian. I said, yes, but Christians love Jews. And that happened last year. And we were all buzzing about it. The pastor is the same pastor from last year. And we walk up to the same hill today. And the same place that we're planning on having the Bible study is two young Israelis, probably about 25, 27 years old, Jonathan and Rami, I think his name is. And I said, we're going to be having a Bible study here. And they asked why. And I explained, this is a church. Christians come to see the David and Goliath. And you're invited to stay. And they did. They stayed. And they listened. And they were surprised by a couple of things that most Israelis are surprised. First of all, when Pastor Tripp said, open the Bible, okay, they opened up the Old Testament. And Jonathan said, why are you opening up our Bible? Why aren't you opening up your Bible? And I explained to them that this is also our Bible. Old Testament and New Testament is the Bible. And they were kind of surprised because, again, the stereotype is, there's the Christians who only read the New Testament. By the way, if you are in a church that only reads the New Testament and not the Old Testament, then send me a comment. We need to talk. But again, they were sitting and they were listening about David and Goliath and a passage that I always find fascinating, comes up. And this is 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 47. And it says this. David is about to go off and go out and take on the giant, the Goliath. And, and Saul wants to put the armor on him and it doesn't work. And in the end, David says, this is what I need everybody to know. That all of this assembly, all the people here will know that the Lord does not save with a sword and a spear, for the battle is the Lord's. And he will give you into our hands. And what I need, and I find fascinating, because we were sitting there and talking to him, and I read it in Hebrew, and it says this, וידעו כל הקהל הזה, כי לא בחרב ובחנית יושיע אדוני, כי לאדוני המלחמה ונתן אתכם בידינו. Now, Jonathan, secular Israeli Jew, said, Yoshia? Yoshia in Hebrew means to save. And he says, isn't that the name of your Savior? Isn't that the name of your God? Because his name is Yeshua. And it dawned on me that Yeshua is the Hebrew word for salvation, the actual word for salvation. And an Israeli picked up on it while we were reading this from the Old Testament. And then another thing dawned on us as we were talking about it is that David at this point had been anointed. He had been anointed with oil, meaning he had been Messiahed. The word Messiah means anointed. So David, the Messiah, says that it's God that is going to Yeshua to save the people. And we all made that connection there on that hill. And then Jonathan says, wait a minute, David, Jesus, David, I mean, they seem like the same. And my son-in-law literally reached out and gave him a Hebrew New Testament and said, listen, here's something I want you to read. And we opened up the first chapter of Matthew with the genealogy, and he read out the genealogy of Jesus in Hebrew. And you go through the names and names and names. All of them are Hebrew names. I mean, we all know these names. And he comes to David. And then he continues names, names, names. And then he comes to Yeshua HaMashiach. And it clicked on him. I don't know if he's going to be saved. I don't know if not. But more and more Israelis are making this connection between their Bible, the Old Testament, their heroes, King David, their Messiah, and the Messiah that came to save all of us. And I find that fascinating that a secular Israeli put that together and then opened up the New Testament and made the connection between David and Jesus. Israel is ripe for its Savior. In Hebrew, it's Yeshua. And I just thought I would share that with you because it touched me deeply and let me and everything that's connected to GIHON Springs understand that we have a role to play right now by coming to Israel and making these connections and proving to the Jewish people in Israel that their Messiah, their Mashiach, they would say King David, and I'm saying King David had a descendant that came to continue and save all of us. That is the Balagan connection for today. And I think that is fascinating. Me and Christy are going to be spending a couple more weeks here. We're going to be touring the land. Join us. Check out my Instagram, The Balagan Connection. I'm going to be posting the shorts there. Check out The Balagan Connection now. Send comments. Ask questions. Be a part of this. And again, like I said, if you're interested in coming to Israel, let me know. We're trying to decide how and when to put this together. So what feedback that we get from you will be a part of this. This is DaviD TaL. This is The Balagan Connection on the hills of Judea. Hope to see you soon.